Hello and welcome to Decipher This, a podcast about music and technology from Ensemble Decipher. I'm Eric Lemon.
I'm Nilufana Nurbash. So today we're really grateful to have Dr. Sarah Weaver with us. Dr. Sarah Weaver is a New York-based contemporary composer, conductor, technologist, educator, and researcher, working internationally as a specialist in network arts. She's an innovator of live performance via the internet by musicians and artists in different geographic locations, encompassing numerous artistic projects with collaborators and interdisciplinary projects with groups such as NASA and United Nations. Dr. Weaver is the director of NowNet Arts and director of the Sarah Weaver Ensemble, and editor of the Journal of Network Music and Arts. She's on the faculty of New School College of Performing Arts Performer-Composer Master's Program. Welcome to Decipher This, Sarah.
Thank you so much.
So, Sarah, can you tell us about how, in the first place, you got interested in music and you decided to pursue it professionally?
I got started in music at a young age on the piano. Around age 6, and played music all through my life at that time. And I think I was really inspired by music teachers once I became of age to go into music. And I think I always had a diverse interest in music, ranging from performing and composing, improvising, conducting, and theory. Yes. So I think I've been inspired my whole life by music.
It's amazing.
Yeah. So you're someone who's done a lot of extensive research and work in the telematic medium. How did you first get interested in this medium?
Pauline Oliveras. I was a composer and pioneer of this medium, and I was working with her at the time in her deep listening practice. And she was connected, it was around 2006, with Chris Chafe at Stanford University, the developer of the JackTrip audio software that we use. And he's also a composer, improviser, and cellist. And they had started a collaboration, and I was working with Pauline at the time, also through her position at the Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute. And I became exposed to the medium at that time and really felt that it was artistically expanding what I had been doing with ensembles locally. So I had been working for a long time in large ensemble music, and the types of properties of the network arts medium really felt that expansive to get things I was working on with local ensembles. So I became really artistically inspired by the medium at first, and then also inspired by all the social capacities.
So could you maybe tell us a little bit about your first experience in telematics, and how have Pauline's ideas shaped you since? I know you talked about how she was kind of like the impetus for this first movement into the medium, but is there something beyond that?
Oh, sure. Yes. So the first collaboration we did, I was actually in Chicago, and there was a festival called the Chicago Calling Festival. Dan Godston directed this festival for a number of years out of Chicago. So it was a festival for Chicago artists collaborating with remote artists in any form of collaboration, remote collaboration, even through the mail, sending letters back and forth. And we were the live collaboration. So I had a group in Chicago performing live with Pauline Oliveras' group at Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute as part of their Eye-Ear series. So that was the first collaboration. And then I from there was back in New York with Pauline and working with her group at RPI, collaborating with a number of other organizations. And her, I think, deep listening practice was really kind of fundamental to being able to tune in multidimensionally, right, to the medium. So when you're collaborating across distance, there's a different type of attention that requires. and type of kind of attentional projection to be able to make those connections beyond the local space, and then also work with that musically. Yeah, so I think it's just a good practice to get into if you're approaching this type of medium. But then from there, musically, another early collaborator, there's also a present collaborator, Mark Dresser. We then also met in those times, working with Pauline and Chris, and working in this medium together. We had a group called the Telematic Circle, and that was Rensselaer Project Institute, Stanford University, and University of California, San Diego, where Mark Dresser was. So that really began a big expansion musically, because we had related backgrounds, and just a little bit more specific into those large ensemble works. Pauline really had a wide variety of of work that she did, and with her intuitions of deep listening really took her many places, as we know, and so then I think from there kind of honed in with people that were a little bit more specific to the types of large ensemble works that I was doing.
Well, actually, that brings two questions to mind for me. So one is if deep listening beyond the telematic medium has influenced your creative output. And also, you mentioned the social capability of telematic medium, which I think is really interesting and very unique to telematic performance in a way that doesn't really exist in our music world. And it would be great if you could talk about your experience on the social capacity of it as well.
Mm-hmm. Sure. Yeah, so deep listening, I studied for 6 years. I had my certificate, and then was also Pauline's apprentice, and so I was really deep into it. And yeah, I think for me, it became something that's and the reason I sought it out also, it was really sort of a core access point, for creativity and composing and improvising. So it's kind of a core tuning, shall we say, for and that's I would say still true today. So yes, I think I use it in my composing, but more in the as a source, for the creativity. And then, again, in the actual performing of the works, there's certain tunings I apply there. So in the social realm of telematic music, we call it network arts music. There's a number of terms for it now, as Eric has fleshed out in our journal. So once we started collaborating remotely, and also with the core of people we were working with that were also very, sort of socially conscious artists and technologists, that brings up these notions of working for peace and working for sort of global issues like the environment. So really early on, especially once we started being able to collaborate internationally, I got started in this medium in 2006, and already by 2009 we were doing these multiple projects with United Nations organizations and Concerts for Peace. And it was interesting at that time, I connected with a lot of diplomats, and they have described this medium as kind of created neutral space. So everyone could stay in their location, but then they could connect in a kind of neutral space, and they thought that was really a good metaphor for diplomacy. And really, too, we were doing those events. We had diplomats scheduled, to kind of introduce events, and then things would happen in the world, like somebody would bomb somebody, and then the diplomat actually couldn't come because of those reasons. But we could still have the concert. And that was also very telling, that the arts could remain a bridge even when the politics failed and the diplomacies failed. So I think there's really a lot of capacity there, and a lot of new connections that we can make to transcend many forms of, I think these as forms of distance, right? And we can transcend that through the arts and through this medium. So really became a wonderful area of work we did, and a lot of those projects have continued today. There's Deep Tones for Peace was an early project at the time that ran for a number of months also through the pandemic. That's a project with basis that was originally a project for peace in the Middle East, and then the purpose became much, much broader. Deep Tones for Peace. Another big one was Resonations, so to resonate nations. That was also some of those early projects that ran for years, in the medium. And then, of course, opening up more projects. Projects for the environment. There's one called Changing Tides, and a number of those have been initiated also by our California collaborators, Mark Dresser and Michael Dessen. And then also I know there's big projects for the environment and the earth happening also out of Indiana and Scott Deal's group. And so, I think a number of people have...
Art model. Yeah.
Yes, there you go. Mm-hmm. Yes, yeah. So, people tuning into the capacity of these mediums now that we can connect so broadly.
We're now going to listen to Sound and Peace by Sarah Weaver. And this piece is performed by Joe McPhee on pocket trumpet and Sarah Weaver on voice, chimes, and electronics.
At sound, listen with sound for peace. At sound, listen at sound, listen for sound with sound of peace. Sound, listen with sound at peace for peace. Listen, peace. Sound at peace of peace. Listen of peace with sound. Listen with peace for peace. Peace in peace. Sound for sound of in peace. At peace for sound in sound of peace. Listen with peace for sound of peace. Listen at sound for sound in peace with peace. At sound at peace in peace of peace. In peace, in sound, at sound, for peace, within peace, in sound, at sound, peace, in for peace, in sound, listen of peace, listen sound, for sound, for peace, listen peace.
That's really remarkable and kind of refreshing to talk about. Actually, I had one follow-up on that, and then I'm going to move on from this. Talking about technology, there's also the idea of having accessibility to technology, and this is something that Ensemble Decipher is also very aware of. And as technologists ourselves, it's definitely one of our goals to make sure that we're fully conscious of it. And, talking about the social aspect of telematic performances, for example, I'm originally from Iran, and I think it would be really fantastic to have this kind of performance between the United States and Iran. But at the same time, the internet is so restrictive and so slow. I don't know how it's possible or not. So, yeah, I wonder if issues such as accessibility to technology arise in your experiences or not, and how, as musicians, can we address those, or is there a responsibility that we have?
Mm-hmm. Yes, yeah, absolutely. This topic comes up right away. Once you because it has required a heavy technology, and especially in those early days. We heard those institutions I was mentioning, and that's because you needed that heavy institution in those locations that had that type of facility to pull it off. But at the same time, we were able to arrange collaboration like that Deep Tones for Peace project. That was the site in Jerusalem. Right, we had to make special arrangements for enough bandwidth to get there, and very specific technologies were able to apply, and so we were able to accomplish it and have a 6-hour event,
Wow.
with them. Yes, but it was a really heavy technology effort. I also did that on a project in 2012 with the iHub Technology Center in Nairobi. And that was another where they had just gotten fiber optic internet. And I'm kind of smiling because, there was, time we had, you get these great stories, like we were in a rehearsal and the internet went out, but it was because a pirate ship had dropped the anchor on the internet that knocked it out for a day. And, so it's real, and the that access to technology and the digital divide is very real, and I think it's something we've always been aware of, and it's I know from the point of view of Chris Chafe in developing JackTrip and keeping it open source. That was always one of the big pushes. You had to keep it as accessible as possible, and then also recently has been developed to work on a Raspberry Pi, so you don't need a $2,000 computer to run it, because that was also criticisms the open source technology, but you need heavy budget to run it.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, there's been, I would say, perpetual efforts, to increase accessibility, and some of this comes down to just infrastructure, things that are kind of out of our control, but things that we could try to help influence. And I'd say in very recent times, we have the JackTrip Foundation that's been formed, and that has people on the board that perhaps could be involved with infrastructure efforts, and also developing programs and funds for this very topic. Especially now that everyone's trying to run it from home, we need a whole new level of accessibility, and trying to get technologies to work on mobile devices is a really big topic and effort. And also, NowNet Arts is one of the reasons I started that organization, is to bring this out into the public. And our first conference was about public and private internet, so bringing this out onto the public internet. So it's not a perfect system. And there's definitely a lot of work to do, but what I can say is that it's there's been efforts all along the way, and they will continue.
So you raised both the JackTrip Foundation and NowNet Arts, and I think this plays into our next question really well. Is that since the pandemic has hit, there's been a lot of, but not unexpected, but a huge increase in the interest in making music with networks or making music telematically. So because of your involvement in these organizations or directing NowNet Arts yourself, and you mentioned this a little bit in what you were previously saying, but how has this interest in demand changed the actual artistic field itself in interesting and unexpected ways? So not necessarily the technological aspect or the institutional or infrastructural aspects.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So I think it's definitely a multifaceted question, because I've always felt that the properties of network arts have also been reflected in trends in contemporary arts anyway, right? So dealing with music that has different types of time dimensions, besides the steady beat and spatialization, and these types of properties that we're in have also been happening in contemporary arts, and out of particular scenes as well. And I do hope more people will write about that, connecting those scenes. And because the network arts, it's not an other, right? It's not existing in a bubble. It's kind of an extension. And to me, it's there's been this development of this medium, but also simultaneously with these trends. And I think there's kind of a larger connection there that will be discovered over time, right? But with that said, now that so many people have turned their heads, and their ears to network arts because of the situation that we're in, I think that there is more reception and experience and openness to those types of properties, right? And that some people are in network arts now kind of temporarily because out of necessity, and will kind of pass through and then go back to or go forward into what they're doing otherwise. And I think some people will become more long-term because perhaps this was something that resonated with them, or they become hybrid, right? Well, they'll have some things that are local and some things that are remote. And so I think it will have an effect on the larger art scene because of so many people passing through the medium, right? But not in a way that may not have happened anyway or was already in motion. I have a kind of broad perspective on that. But I also think it's significant that it's happening as a result of a pandemic and going through, and the types of art that is created in a pandemic in a remote setting, right, will also have its own effect. There's definitely new types of expressions I've seen in this medium that we did not see before. I think influenced by being in a pandemic. So it's a combination of things happening.
Do you think that since there's been an influx of people working in the network arts, there's a lot of people that are coming in and they're trying to resolve problems that are already things that the network arts community has been grappling with for a long time? You talk about this asynchronization, and I saw lots of people posting about how do I play string quartet with my friends that when we're socially distanced and stuff like that. And then you have 50 millisecond latency, and that doesn't work. I can't play my Beethoven string quartet anymore. Do you see people reaching out to you in that regard, or just people kind of you're oh no, just read the literature?
Yeah, it's been a bit of both. Yes. I read the papers, listen to the recordings, and I think some people they were kind of shocked into this, right? So I definitely understand, just trying to figure it out and do what you were doing before, and it's definitely all understandable. And I just try to communicate, people in kind of relatable ways. Say, well, the music you were doing, that's local. That's, conceive of that as local. And once you go remote, think about, we cross time zones, right? Think about solar systems, time systems where you have planets that are going at different rates, but they're part of the same system. And so trying to create kind of very relatable ways to kind of conceive for this, and to emphasize that it's not a replacement, for local music. Right. This is a different medium. So try something else, try something new in here, and don't try to recreate what you were doing, because it wasn't ever meant for that. And that's not the threat of it. It's not a threat that this is going to be replacing what you were doing, because it's not going to anyway. So we were in a different time. Just try something different, right? And think of it as something new, and then hopefully we'll be able to return to the localized forms that we had as well. Think of it like a yes and.
Now we'll listen to Telecello Concerto, a collaborative work between Chris Chafe and Sarah Weaver, performed by Tintinabulate and Soundwire.
So, speaking about your organization, NowNet Arts, the NowNet Arts has two ensembles and they're both performing on March 6th at Earfest. Could you tell us a little bit about both groups and also the upcoming performances?
Yes, yes. Yeah, when you mentioned we have two ensembles, I guess in a larger sense, here we have the NowNet Arts Ensemble that consists of performers I've been working with for over a decade in this medium, and that was the group that performed at our recent festival in December, and we just recently scheduled a next performance in May. And so the NowNet Arts Lab Ensemble has been more recently formed. We actually started it as part of our conferences in recent years because this medium does require a lot of practice and experimentation. And so it's great to have our professional projects where we kind of jump in for a couple of days, but to have a group that could be more mutually beneficial, where we can experiment and have a lab in the tradition of lab ensembles for composers, that were experimenting with new forms. The lab ensemble has become very active in the pandemic. It was really the first thing I turned to back in almost a year ago now, and when we were locked down and we didn't have a lot of the technology ready yet to work from home, so that the lab ensemble ran daily, twice a day, to accommodate for different time zones also. And then we eventually kind of went to weekly, and now we're 1 week per month ongoing, and that's been a good pace for us. Yeah, but there's been really just so many developments through that ensemble, to be able to kind of transition to being entirely virtual, and running everybody from home. And we've had performers from like 17 different countries, participating, all from home, all getting, everything going. And it's been really beautiful. So this group, they'll be performing in Earfest. So we have a noon group that's mostly people in North America and Europe. And then we have an evening group, 10 p.m. Eastern time. So we have some people on the west coast of the U.S. and then also in Singapore and some in Canada, I believe, as well. And some people play in both groups, actually. Very enthusiastic. Yes, yeah. So that group, we're developing a project called the Synthesis Project. So for several years, up until 2019, I had been working on the Synchrony series. So now I've moved into the Synthesis series, and as a large body of work. So the Synthesis Project is kind of part of developments for those pieces. So we do kind of demonstration performances, of it's kind of a work in progress, I would say, or work in development. And we've had performances of this project already in January and February, and so this will be our third iteration of this work. And it's multidisciplinary, so we have musicians and also visual artists, that are involved. So that's been really special too. And then also in the lab ensemble, members can propose their own kind of chamber group pieces, right? And so we have Anne-Sophie Anderson's and initiated a chamber piece that will be performed again, or will be performed. It's called Say It Again. Yeah, and that'll be a chamber piece made up of people from the lab ensemble that have now formed their own group. So really looking forward to that as well. That will be on the 12 p.m. Eastern concert after we do the Synthesis Project large ensemble.
So moving back to kind of thinking about telematics here, and more specifically telematic music's tension between virtual reality and telereality. So for some background for listeners on what I'm thinking about in this question, and I'm pulling from the art historian Chris Paulson here, virtual reality is essentially where the user or viewer is taking in a simulated or even recorded world. In other words, the stuff we're engaging with isn't happening now or isn't real. And telereality is different. The stuff it shows is real and is happening usually pretty much in the now, but is not physically present. So what are some challenges of differentiating between the two through art? And what are some of the approaches that you take to address this challenge when you make telematic music?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good question. We definitely found there's a special quality to live and perception of now, right? And there's been a lot of discussion in the field about what is live and does it matter? And because we go through so much effort to make live, and there's a lot of projects these days where people are doing kind of multi-tracks to create an ensemble, but they didn't all perform it live. They kind of did it through multi-track. So yeah, I think there's a special quality to the live transmission, right? And honestly, I think you can feel it energetically in the music, but it's also due to the visuals, right? And I'm definitely audio oriented, right? And like to incorporate visuals, but for me to be able to see the performers performing live, right, really adds a lot to the perception of live performance. So if we were audio only, right, I think that would be a much different experience for the audience and would kind of call those things into question. So, and that's perhaps another area to flesh out in the research too, is the role of visual perception in live performance.
I mean, I remember from your Resonations concert, watching videos of it, you had very clear the feedback looping around between the different sites made it apparent that the spaces themselves were live because you could hear what was happening on one site, go to another site, and then come back from the speaker systems going into the mics. And so then it's apparent that, oh, this is telereality because we're getting back what we just heard in our own physical space. So like, feedback is one way that this is a technique, I guess, that's often done. Are there other ways of like creating this situational, clear presence of liveness through audio techniques like that?
Well, I would say not so much that comes to mind. I think perhaps the humanness that comes across, those human moments of connection, and also trying to connect the audiences so that they can perceive that they are live as well, is a big part of that. Yeah, and I can say, ultimately it matters in the work itself, right? So if it's a work that's written for live performance or if it's a work that's written for recording, we certainly can perceive a sense of now with a recording, right? And recording from a long time ago, right? And it's the reason we keep all that art around is that we can feel that that sense of now and relevance, right? But live is perhaps different from now, right? We can perceive now, but what's different about perceiving live? And especially now I feel like I'm a poet now. Now that we're in a pandemic, right? The feeling of live is also, people are kind of seeking that out, right? Because of all the isolation, to feel like we're together in a space. Yeah.
So actually, you touched upon this a little bit. In your latency paper, you give us a lot of data on the audience's response and engagement to the telematic performances. And you mentioned how a lot of the audience ended up closing their eyes during the performance. So my question is if you think video is really significant to the artistic experience of a telematic performance or not.
Yeah, and that's a great question, and it's really something that's been debated. I know from Chris Chafe's, especially the earlier work, he did not want video. It was it was all audio, and that's
Wow.
what mattered. And I think audio has its own particular properties, right, that function differently. And so without the video, you can definitely get a much different experience. And I guess in more recent times, the Universal Synchrony Music project that I was doing with the NASA Kepler and K2 mission, where we were soundifying stars and planets in deep space. I think that had a particularly different quality compared to seeing visuals of stars and planets, right? So being able to work with it in audio and the ability of audio to travel, I think, was very key to that project. So it may just depend on the project, right? But there is just such a demand for visuals these days, to be present with the audio. But I think, the role is a bit different now because you go to a live concert and you do see the performers on the stage, right? So to me right now, it's like this, an equivalent, we're trying to recreate. So, okay, you can see the performers, they're at home, but you can see them. They're not going to be dancing around like a music video, but, but you see the presence of the performers, right?
Yeah.
Then there's also the visual art, right, in the medium, which is a much different, role. So getting into the abstract of that, but in a way that functions within an ensemble, right, versus a kind of takeover of the screen, right? And especially now people are watching on their computer screens or their phone or their giant monitors, we don't know, right? So we have to be prepared for vastly different scales, right, of visuals, right? So getting into that, but so Catherine Librovskaya has been an interesting or a great figure, in this realm, from the experimental intermedia scene. So she has done a lot of pioneering work also in being ensemble member as a video artist. So how to kind of function in that way where there's sometimes you have the solo, but then there's a lot of time where you're kind of functioning as an ensemble member and, kind of working within that way. And to me, that's a great way to kind of look forward into integrating visuals. But then Eric brought up about virtual reality, and that's another approach, right? And Ben Leverage in our community is one of the scholars in that area. And that was also an early experience with Pauline Oliveris in Second Life. Second Life was big back in the in that day, and there was the Avatar Orchestra Metaverse, and we would all log in and perform as avatars. And that's different because you're kind of out of your local space and you're in a virtual environment. And yes, I think there's really much to explore, on the visual side, and for now, it's more kind of conceiving of that for your piece. If you would like the visual presence of performers, or would you like video art, and in what way? And are you going to go all virtual or sort of have a mixed reality perception, or no visuals at all? Yeah, it's kind of dependent on the piece at the moment, but I imagine more will develop.
So do you have any plans coming up that you'd like to let the world know about?
Sure. Yes. Well, as I say, we have the ongoing lab ensemble, once a month, and that's really open to contemporary musicians, actors, dancers, visual and video artists. So if you're interested to become involved, please get in touch. We'll have a concert date that's just been set actually for last night for the the NowNet Arts Ensemble. So that'll be May 23rd, and so we'll put that up on our website. But that'll be our next kind of concert with that ensemble. We have our annual festival and annual conference, right? So our conference will be announced again. It'll be in November again, and also continuing to have our headquarters institution of the Institute of Advanced Computational Science at Stony Brook. It's kind of continuing with us in that, and all of our satellite sites and home locations. We'll have a journal issue coming out in the next couple of weeks, Journal of Network Music and Arts. So that will be upcoming. And we have a JackTrip certification program that's just been launched. So anybody who would like to learn JackTrip, we have a formal program now. There's a 1-month program for the virtual studio, the hardware device, and then a 3-month program if you want to learn all the open source technology and kind of the full package. And you can find that information through the JackTrip Foundation in partnership with NowNet Arts. So either of those organizations can give you information on the program. So yes, we're really looking to grow the field and the abilities, to work with the technology, and try to continue to support the work in this field.
That is really, really exciting. So I think this is our last question. As we're getting out of this pandemic world at some point, hopefully. My question is, as you were mentioning, like this is a very different medium, and it's not going to be replacing anything, and people need to like approach it in a different way. So my question is, what are some of the elements in this medium that you think augments artistic creation in a way that is unique to this? And yeah, so like, encourage us to do it more, even after the pandemic is over.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. So this medium, this has always been very inspiring to me, especially in terms of like time and space, right? And so the wide varieties of time dimensions, right, that we get to work with in this, yeah, again, I think are reflective of larger time systems that we have in our worlds. So I think it kind of tunes us into those types of realms that we can continue to be inspired by, in this medium, and and also the spatial components when we're not in headphones. We're back in spaces, and we have speakers that we can definitely place around the space in very creative ways, and having remote performers coming in different places on the stage, and in many kind of creative ways that have already been evolving in this kind of computer music realm. And I think there's really just a lot to explore with spatialization and remote performers. I mean, there's certainly the practical realm, right, of utilizing remote performers when not everybody can travel. And you talk about also accessibility, so traveling is also part of that. I mean, the lab ensemble we have, I don't know if they'll ever meet, right? Because everyone's all over the place.
Yeah.
It'd be great, if we try to have some kind of meetup, at some point. But really being able to play with so many people in so many different locations, is really, I think unique to this medium in very practical ways. And I think, there's certainly a very particular type of metaphysical quality to this, where we're kind of going beyond the local, that, is perhaps harder to articulate, but is very clear, I think in the performances that's happening. And I think that's another reason I've been kind of drawn to this type of work. Right. And, I think it also really kind of calls into question, just kind of what is distance and what is time and what is space, these types of bigger questions, because of what we can create perceptually. Right. So can we create the perception of synchrony, and can we create the perception of closeness? Right. And, beyond these ways that we're used to. And this medium definitely brings that up, in unique ways. And also, certainly the multidisciplinary capacities are huge in new ways, right, that we haven't explored enough yet. And as we were speaking about before, the social capacities, think of the medium, are also very unique. So there's really, I think, so much to explore forward, and it's been a reason I've been involved in this medium now for like 15 years. I figured out. So, yeah, and from the beginning, it really has always been about the work, and I just hope also after the pandemic that people will be continued to be inspired by the work, and that it's there are certain works that are appropriate for this medium, just like any other medium.
So let's listen to a little bit of one of Sarah's works that takes in a very remote performer through the technique of sonification, with a special guest appearance by NASA's Kepler/K2 mission. This work is called Universal Synchrony Music. Wow. There's like so much that questions and really interesting things to talk about here, but we're just about out of time. I guess like the last thing is like, where can people find your work? Can you give a little plug or any shout outs that you want to have?
Sure. So you can just go to sarahweaver.org and also nownetarts.org and jacktrip.org. So all orgs here.
Cool. And you can find Sarah Weaver's work and the NowNet Arts Ensemble and the NowNet Lab Ensemble performing at Earfest on March 6th at 12 p.m. and 10 p.m. Eastern Time. And we'll put a link in the podcast webpage. Thank you so much, Sarah.
Great. Yes, thank you. And I'm really looking forward to Ensemble Decipher's performance. And this is really very inspiring, the work you've been doing, and looking forward to much more ahead.
Yeah, great.
Thank you for your time. Take care.